Welcome, everybody, to the expert interviews. And today I'm excited to talk with Robin Fox, whose name I totally love because if you see my room, I'm all about the foxes. And Robin is a psychological associate and she's doing her dissertation, which I have so much respect for, and she's her specialization, which is in sports psychology and addiction. And she's a certified personal trainer. So she's blending these worlds. She'll be done in a year with her doctorate. And today is what we were in February of 2024. And so she'll be finishing that up and really launching into the work that she does, which is amazing. I got wind of Robin through a friend, and we had this nice conversation about her work. And it made me excited to not only have this interview, but to put on my workout clothes so I could experience Robin's approach. And for whoever is watching, to give you also a taste of this beautiful blend of psychology and fitness and embodiment. So, Robin, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to me to be invited to something like this. And it's so funny kind of looking back at my life and having this interaction and being able to talk about my life's work in this way. I remember when I first came into the field and there's all these therapeutic interventions and what's your treatment modality? How are you going to do this? And it was really scary for me as a young person coming into the field. And there's just like all these different things that are in the textbooks and in practicum training. And then I remember feeling really overwhelmed and then sitting with a mentor of mine at the time and wait a second, I'm overthinking this. I'm overthinking it.
Mm,
And that's my tendency. That's what I do is I often overthink things. And so this part of the field, this idea of we just get paid to love people and just bringing it back to that when the overwhelm kicks in and just circling back. Man,
mm,
that's really grounding and powerful if you can look at it
mm.
that way.
I'm literally getting chills by what you're saying those chills you get when you feel and you hear truth. And it's funny because I'm one of those people that does all these modalities, which I love. I love
Yeah,
doing them. I expressive arts and brain spotting and
love
EMDR and
it.
hertz work on embodiment. But you're right. You often would just step back and really the fundamental is this human to human contact
Yes.
and
Yes.
how we show up in our own bodies, in our own self, and how that
Yeah.
is we're not healing
Yeah.
anybody. We're supporting and guiding somebody to do what already is natural, like that inner
Exactly.
healing that's there already. That inner healing
Yeah.
just needs permission sometimes
Mhm.
and connection. It's like a handheld.
Totally, especially with complex trauma. It's maybe there's so much going on. It's like, how do I hold space for this person and support them in the best way possible? And it's okay, let's just start with love, right? Start with love. The rest will figure itself out. And like you have the skill set, you have the training, you have the education. And if you can start from a space of love, everything else flows. And then that person is going to become so much more accessible because they'll feel held and they'll feel loved. And then having that therapeutic relationship, and especially in the face of trauma, it oftentimes acts as a corrective relationship too, right? Where they're like, oh my gosh, this is what it can feel like to really be
Yeah.
held and just
Yeah.
and space. So that's huge.
It's a blessing. I always consider it an honor and a privilege is the word I often use because to be trusted to be on the path to, I call it co-create, to co-create
Yeah.
this healing path with whomever we get to play with, ideally to work with, to play with. I like to use the word play because we need more play in ourselves and in the world. And speaking of play, I would love to play with you. Before I play with you and have you guide me in something, I want to share
Yeah.
how when in our conversation, how I really loved your journey and how you really committed. So you shared something in particular, which isn't like the beginning, but the middle, and you can share for anyone watching your arc, that one that you shared with me around you bringing this method into treatment centers. And what really struck me was your commitment when you and your dad went in and you guys worked. You put your sweat and labor into creating a gym, a type of workout space with all the equipment. So I don't want to give it away. If you wouldn't mind sharing your story, what inspired you to move into the field of psychology, a bit of how you shared with me, how you came to blend your
Yeah.
fitness background with therapy and how that opened up your mind and like
Yeah.
opened up possibilities for you.
Yeah. For sure. Gosh, man, it's been such a journey. I don't even know where to begin. Growing up, I really struggled with my mental health as a kid. I was very much a lost child. I struggled with depression, anxiety, self-injury, suicide ideation, suicide attempts, all as a child. And I remember keeping it all so close to my chest. I didn't want to rock the boat in my family. My dad had a lot of health issues when I was a kid, and I was like, I have to be good. I have to keep the family together. Like, what's going to happen with dad? I felt like I was scared all the time that he was going to go to bed one night and not wake up. And I didn't recognize that at the time as severe anxiety. But now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could just give that kid a hug and say it's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
you don't have to parent. You don't have to parent yourself, and you're protected. And there's looking back, I can really see all the pain that I went through as a kid. And I remember distinctly the day that I was 13 years old. I was cutting, I was burning, I was thinking about ending my life. And I walked into a Bikram yoga studio. I don't know
Wow.
why.
At
God put it on my
13?
heart. Yeah, I was 13.
Amazing.
I was 13. Yeah.
If anyone's done Bikram, that's intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that 90-minute hot yoga, 26 postures, 2 breathing exercises, 105 degrees, 40% humidity. Yeah, it's taught in dialogue, toes
Yeah,
on the line, do the posture the correct
right.
way, look at yourself in the mirror, avoid wiping sweat away.
Mm,
There's so much empowerment and grounding in that practice.
mm,
And so for me as a 13-year-old kid with low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and being in a hot room with a bunch of gorgeous people, I hated myself, I hated my body, and the walls are made of mirrors, mirrors to the right, to the left, and in front of me, and I'm like, this is horrible. This is horrible.
oh,
And it was so hard. It was so hot, but I did it. I did the whole class with this wonderful teacher named Mirna. And I remember coming out of that class thinking, oh my gosh, that was awful. And there was something inside me that felt like I had stumbled upon something really special. And I was like, this is something that I need. And something about me, probably the way that my dad raised me, was to never quit and to do the things that scare you. And if something is uncomfortable and hard, you should most certainly do it. And so I went back the next day. And my mom was so wonderful. She drove me every single day. And I took these hot Bikram yoga classes. I did it almost every day for more than a decade. I still
wow.
practice, just not as
That's
much as I used to, but I still make sure that I'm getting in at least a couple classes a week. But that yoga literally saved my life. I absolutely would not be here today if it wasn't for Bikram Yoga Morgan Hill, Bikram Yoga San Jose, Bomitra Yoga Mountain View at the time. I can genuinely say having a practice where I was safe to show up as me, cuts and burns, tears in the room,
mm,
anxiety like hell, hating the person that I saw, and being told, you did great, come back tomorrow, push yourself more, walk the meet, do all these hard things. I was like, okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to keep coming back, even on the really hard days where I didn't want to. And through my yoga practice, I got into what's little known in the world as the USA Yoga Federation, which is competitive yoga. Got into that, and that was a blast. I did that for many years, had a great time doing that with a really cool team. And that was where I learned that I had developed all this flexibility by starting yoga as a little kid and I had no strength. I was a noodle and I had no strength. And it was only a matter of time before I got
mm,
hurt. So being someone who is ultra flexible and wanting to be fit and healthy and now having it be such an integral part of my life and literally the thing that was keeping me alive gave me I would look forward to going back on the mat every day. It became a really empowering and safe place
mm,
for me. And the way that the
mm.
teachers would, hi, Robin, how are you? What row are you going to be in? Oh, practice here. And people being like, oh, practice next to me. And it
Wow.
was just this community that
Sense
absolutely
of
helped
and
and encouraged me.
like a sense of belonging too. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
want to even acknowledge how like my inner little girl, I have this a very alive inner 6 year old little girl who doesn't like to be told what to do. So I was
Yes.
like, it was militant, but I love it's like these reframings, right? Like in therapy,
Yeah.
when we don't have structure, we don't have freedom.
Yes.
They need to be
Yes.
hand in hand. Structure. We know this in training dogs. My dog was just barking and I let her out the room. But in training dogs or even having children, we need structure so that we can have freedom. Um,
Yes.
with dogs, if you don't have somebody being the leader and giving structure, then they think they have the stress and the anxiety of feeling they have to lead. Like what you experienced as a child, you felt like you had to lead. The role that you
Yeah.
had to play was this role of protecting the family and then ingesting it all undigested, ingesting without being able to digest it because it was a role that was at your stage of development. It was
Too
so
much.
that other support, the sense of belonging, this community, this embodiment was really what helped. I'm hearing like shift the needle.
Totally.
It also, it seems to get you to this part of your spark that you didn't even know that was inside of you.
Yes. It having that external structure where the room is the same, the heat is the same, the postures, the dialogue are all the same. It provided me with an opportunity to find so much internal peace, right? Like when the outside kind of settled for me in that way, I was able to really feel like, okay, I can do this. I'm here. I'm in my body. This might be a really hard class. My performance might suck, but it's just yoga. Who cares, right? And just like showing up with this. And honestly, even with the yoga and getting into weightlifting too, it really is. It comes down to love even then too. I'm going to show up on my yoga mat or I'm going to show up in the gym and I'm just going to love myself. Whether it's 90 minutes in the hot room or it's an hour or more, whatever, less in the gym, I'm just gonna love myself for this time, and that's my goal. And so that the experience of doing the yoga was so powerful, and then coming to find out, oh my gosh, okay, I've cultivated this great flexibility, which is that's cool and that's fun. Flexibility without strength can be really dangerous. And my sister, right, I love
There's
her
a
so
there's such
much.
a there's such a metaphor
Yeah,
in that, right? Where flexibility, this conversation is so rich because there's pieces that I didn't even know we'd go into. I want to go back to flexibility and strength, but even
yeah,
like control and to speak a little bit about this child that was cutting, this self-harming
yep, yep,
and feeling like often, and you can tell me if that's your experience, these are just means of trying to have control over an uncontrollable
yep,
environment. And it's a way, of course, self-soothing because it releases chemicals in the body and it can be misunderstood. And so these are
yes,
ways of feeling like we have a sense of dominion or a sense of control in an environment that's uncontrolled. Having a controlled environment I'm wondering if that gave you a sense of relief, that little girl, and that you didn't
absolutely.
have to control something.
Exactly. It created an opportunity for peace to flood in, right? And just like the brain has this wonderful way of observing the situations that make us feel really bad, the brain also gets to create memories around the situations that make us feel really good. And
Mm,
so coming out of the hot room or even out of the gym and having that accomplished feeling, my brain's snapshot and then
right.
for me, it's okay, I need to go there and do those things more and more. And what I found over time was that the cutting and the burning and all the negative thought flooding that I had all the time, it just slowly started to go away. And I mean,
Quieted.
it
Yeah.
it took years for me to really to stop self-injuring. It took years. I didn't stop until I was 18, but I watched it decrease and I watched my self-esteem and just like my overall feeling of confidence go up when I started doing the yoga. And then when I added in weightlifting to develop strength, it was like I felt like I was literally watching myself become a new person. It was like my skin was being shed and something new was happening. And just, I felt like there was so much growth and just emotional maturity that really developed through both the yoga and through weightlifting and the mentorship that came along with that. Because there were so many yoga teachers who were like, oh my gosh, this flexibility is great. And
Mm.
now you're getting strong. And so they would be with me after class. So for me as a kid, I'm like, maybe I'm not as fucked up as I thought.
And to acknowledge too the time it takes. I just literally did a video on this about going slow with trauma healing, and
Yes.
just literally just posted about this today on LinkedIn. How my clients and really my co-creators, because client is a word, right? It's another whole other thing, but they all blame themselves often or feel shame or embarrassment. Which is also a trauma response or even just a conditioned response that the process isn't going any faster. And it's understandable that you want the discomfort to go away faster, but the shame piece is like, I should be healing faster. And I think we need to destigmatize that it's like anything that needs to take its like a flower or anything that grows, it needs to take its time to release naturally. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you had the time and that like your body, your system knew to give you the time to release this versus abruptly letting go of something that
Yes.
had probably been a comfort for a really long time. So some part of
Totally.
you might have been like, it's not safe to let go of this. Like what'll happen?
Yeah.
Needed to trust this new process
Yeah.
that was unfolding. I does that feels relatable?
Yeah, no, you're totally spot on. Because I even remember the behaviors that I did to try to decrease the cutting, and those are details for another conversation, but man, just the way that I tried so hard to stop when I started to find that I had value, right? There's inherent value that I hold as a human being having this human experience. And when I started going to college for psychology, which I was somewhere between 13 and 15 when I started going to college and majoring in psychology.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was loving it. So hence the almost about to graduate with my doctorate and I just turned 25. So
Awesome. You're a high achiever.
I'm blessed beyond measure. Yet the perfectionist in me is certainly a result of trauma.
It's so valuable. I think that everything we're saying could be a nugget that somebody needs
Yeah.
to hear. And I want to circle back to something you said a moment ago about flexibility and strength, like one without
Yeah.
the other. And it felt like a metaphor where it's great to be flexible, like as a human. And sometimes that can be a trauma response to fight, flight, freeze, and then most recently acknowledged appease or fawn. And that
Yeah.
appease or fawn is that over flexibility. I'll just be the good girl. I'll be the good boy, the good person, the good human, and or people please and not put my needs, not prioritize myself to the detriment. So those are some ways of being over flexible as a trauma
Yeah.
response. And
Totally.
strength is important too, but if it's a strength, if it's embodied in a way that's more of guarding against and pushing away, which is another natural trauma response, neither one of those is to be shamed. They're to be understood. But
Yes. Love
you're
that.
speaking to this beautiful balance of how do you embody it? How do you embody both flexibility and strength so that you can be like you as the emerging young adult were finding your integration was the word that was coming to me,
Yeah.
your experience. And not only integration, but trustable, because it wasn't just a concept of I'm valuable and now I can find my balance. It was an experience,
Mhm.
embodied experience of feeling your value and repetitively having that reinforced by the people around you that help continue to boost your spirit on its natural course. That's a lot of words,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
tell me
That's
what.
solid. Yeah. That's such a beautiful way to just really conceptualize all of this.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Like in the Bikram yoga community, they oftentimes, will say having means nothing if you don't know how to use it. Right. And
mm,
I think with my body being so flexible to a certain point, it became like that where I was just like dumping into postures and back bending in
mm,
unsafe ways. And so I really got to take a step back through a lot and a whole lot of mentorship and spending hours and hours with yoga teachers and then eventually strength coaches and learning how do I successfully integrate flexibility with strength training. And so my sister Bobby, who I love so much, I remember going to the gym with her and we're 5 years apart. And when I maybe 15 and started going to the gym with her for the first time, and she was so loving in teaching me how to do things safely. And so over time, weightlifting just became more and more an integral part into my life to the point where now I do that more than yoga. And when I started studying psychology and then specifically chose to specialize in addiction studies, I started doing internships along the way at different drug and alcohol treatment centers. And I learned so much through these different internships at different addiction treatment centers on the road to becoming a drug and alcohol counselor at that time. And one of the glaring things that I just couldn't not notice was that there wasn't a physical fitness component at so many of these addiction treatment centers. And oftentimes centers will call themselves holistic, but not have a physical fitness piece. and sat on that for many years. And I found myself encouraging people to exercise during sessions, like a lot of clinicians do. And I felt like there was something missing. So I ended up getting a certification as a personal trainer, and I was like, let's just get this and see where it goes. And then in 2020, I don't, I can't really tell you honestly what quite came over me, but it was early 2020, and there was this center that I'm actually now working at called New Life Community Services here in Santa Cruz. Uh, and it is just the most special place. Just the way that they do drug and alcohol treatment, the way that the staff there shows up for the clients, it's just otherworldly. It's amazing. And they came on my heart, and I said, I want to do something special for them. So I ended up going there, and they did have a little bit of gym equipment at the time. So I looked at it, and all of it was outdoors, rusty. And so I went to the director and I said, hey, can I help you guys out? Can I donate some gym equipment? And can I also take the gym equipment that you guys have home, make it nice with the help of my dad's a mechanic by trade. And so he is great with his hands, great with tools, and I know that he can fix this stuff up. And she was like, yeah, sure, do it. And so I ended up putting all of the gym equipment that they had in my truck. And I said to the client, I promise I'm bringing it back as soon as I can. And in the meantime, I ended up doing a fundraiser for gym equipment. It ended up being blessed with raising quite a bit of money for that, and fixed up over 1,000 pounds of steel plates with my dad and some barbells. And we just made everything beautiful and looking new again, spray painted it, brought it back. And then I was able to ask the clients there what gym equipment they felt like they were missing. And I was welcomed with a list of things. And I went out and bought all of it. And I remember the day like pulling up in my truck, and that facility, they provide up to 6 months of drug and alcohol treatment for men and women, but we primarily have men, and primarily people are on probation and parole. So I remember pulling up in my truck, and they come out and they see all the gym equipment, and there was just like, it was like Christmas time. So there's just, again, it all comes back to love. It all comes back. It was just the coolest thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And they helped me unload my truck. We brought it outside. We made a really nice gym for them outside with all the new equipment and the old equipment looking nicer. And all these people who are really struggling and trying to get their minds right and putting their lives back together post incarceration, they now have a place to go into their body, because a lot of these facilities are doing a fantastic job at helping people mentally. And often there's a missing physical fitness component. That's how Fox Recovery Methods started, was in 2020 through what I call a love project, just being of service. And it was cool. And I was like, what more can I do? And so that's when I sat down at my computer and started sending out emails to different drug and alcohol treatment centers. So I ended up getting an opportunity to work at another treatment center and teach people how to lift weights safely as part of recovery. So I taught classes there a couple days a week, and it just totally changed my life. And it changed the way that I viewed physical fitness. It's not just something that we do to change our body composition, right? Or like to look better, to go on a vacation. Like, it's sure, like that stuff. Yes, great, wonderful. Take care of your body. And I hope that you're chasing physique goals that are meaningful to you. And being able to use weightlifting, and I even blend in a lot of yoga stuff too as part of our warm up and our cool down even. But being able to integrate that into drug and alcohol treatment is so powerful. I have never seen anything more powerful in my life than watching somebody really struggling, who perhaps recently went through trauma and is fighting drug addiction, be able to pick up a heavy barbell and press it up over their head for the first time. And maybe 5 minutes ago, and this happens all the time, and it's like one of my favorite things, whether it's an empty barbell, which is 45 pounds, and that's super heavy, or it's 250 pounds that they just back squat, and that's super heavy. It's just to watch people become empowered in that way and walk away being like, oh my gosh, I'm capable of doing hard things. So cool. So cool. And it's genuinely what I feel like I was put on this planet to do was
Yeah. Yeah.
to use like my passion for Bikram yoga and my passion for weightlifting and psychology and addiction, like just make this healing sandwich for people to
Which
do.
I love, which is now called the Fox Recovery Method, which I love. So speaking to that, we talked about doing a experiential. I asked if you would guide me through something. And one of the things that I think is so important is what you're saying around the need for a true holistic approach to trauma healing. And I understand that often with bureaucracy and resource, it can feel in different centers and in different clinics challenging to bring all of what's this true holistic approach, mind, body, and however people define spirit for themselves. And it's essential because we know now more than ever, I think it's more and more acknowledged that trauma stores in the body.
Yep.
And if we're not addressing how we have trauma in our body, we're really not working with the whole person, because the mind and the body we know are very connected. Not
Yeah.
only our thoughts about our body in the literal sense, but how our trauma stores, how our brain stores trauma and how our body stores trauma. So, in order to truly release, even if someone's not experiencing big T trauma, we all have these small T traumas, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, grief, all of
Yeah.
it's in our body. And to really be able to feel fully supported, I also really believe that we need embodied practices. That's what I love. I love doing the art and the body and the mind, and each person has their own blueprint. So, speaking to that, let's do a little embodiment. And I have my workout outfit on. I'm someone who likes to work out. I walk my dogs. I do breath work in the morning. And still, this is to help me stay regulated when I
Yeah.
feel, and for some people who feel disconnected to their body because the body hasn't been a safe place to reside. Because if you
Yeah.
connect to your body, then you connect to the feelings of trauma that are stored in the body.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned starting with something possibly gentle. I'm
Well, yeah.
inviting you to bring me into an experience that someone who's watching might identify as something that they could do, process what's inside their body and their nervous system.
Let's do it. Yeah. So I would love to take you through a really simple warm up that I might do with a client coming to me for a personal training session who is also struggling with trauma or who's also struggling with drug or alcohol addiction. And so let's have you go ahead and stand up. Yeah. So let's say that you just came to me, and whether you're someone who's brand new or someone that I've worked with for a long time, where I start off just talking about how you're feeling in your body and having an opportunity to do some clearing. So anything that comes to mind, anything that's bothering you, maybe something that happened or a discovery or a breakthrough that you had, and just having just a conversation, right? And so oftentimes the first couple of minutes is maybe going to feel a little bit more like a therapy type check-in. It won't be too long either. We'll do just a quick simple warm up. You'll laugh when you see how simple it is. Say that we just finished doing a clearing, how you're doing and chit chatting, and I'm getting to know your emotional state for the day. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you're feeling in this moment.
Okay. Right now, I'm feeling great because I'm talking to you, but I'm going to bring up something that has authentically been in my body that I've been moving through, and it's been this feeling of overwhelm. Mm. It's in the overwhelm shows up as contraction, tightness in my jaw and my back and my shoulders.
Okay.
And then the mind, the discrimination. So that was happening, for weeks. So that's
Okay.
just,
Oh, gotcha. How many times have you been able to do some kind of exercise in the last week?
I love to work out. I love to move, and then I'll do morning breath work and have a morning practice. And then I have these different workouts. I do the class right now, which I love, and I work with dogs. But I've noticed correlation between the overwhelm is when I'm producing a lot, I'm producing videos and I'm seeing clients and I'm doing working on a project, my ADD brain will have me hyper focus on work, and so I do that at the detriment of my workout and my morning practice, and so then I got to pull myself back. That's a long way of saying not as much as usual.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. That's okay. You're here. You're here today. That's great. Let's connect with the feeling of overwhelm that you named. So take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose. And maybe with each inhale, you can imagine that you're tracing that breath up your spine. And then with each exhale, tracing that exhale down your spine. Really good. Good breath here. And continue to breathe at your own pace. And take a moment and ask yourself, where in my body am I feeling this sense of overwhelm? Where is it coming up for me? And when you find that place, go ahead and put a hand there. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Good noticing. Go ahead and take another deep inhale through your nose, deep exhale through your nose. And as you inhale, maybe you notice belly rise right there where that overwhelm is. Exhale, belly falls. And in your own mind, maybe there's something that you can say, a message that you can send to that place that's feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it's an affirmation. Yeah, noticing if that feeling is starting to move now in your body and sending some love to those spaces that are feeling overwhelmed, maybe stagnant. Another deep inhale here through your nose. Yeah. What do you notice is happening here?
It felt good. For one, it feels really good and fine. Breathing in the spine, good. Noticing where it is in the body, feels, and adding in the affirmation feels aligned. It feels helpful. And I noticed my mind going from the noticing the belief around, which I've been clear around lately, is what's the rush, what's the hurry. And so my mind naturally knew to do the turnaround. Okay, so what's the affirmation positive with that? Help. So,
Yes.
like that felt way more like an open breath.
Yeah.
And my knees, so I don't know if you noticed, my knees then naturally drops down a little. So the hips started to open. It feels like a relaxed stance. I'd be curious what you have to say. I mean,
Yeah, I noticed like your shoulders dropped, right? Like you're feeling more relaxed. So it's amazing what even just that can do and how powerful that can be as part of a warm up, right? And so that's what separates, because I work with everybody, right? But if you're someone who's coming to me with trauma or addiction issues, it's okay, great. So we're gonna do warm ups a little bit differently. And so the personal training session might feel a little bit different than traditional training sessions because this is our starting place. Okay, so we've identified how you feel. We've moved the feeling around in the body. You've sent some affirmation, some love into that space where you're feeling overwhelmed. And I see the shoulders have dropped and you're more relaxed, right? And so now we get to get into the physical body. So go ahead and bring your arms out. Perfect. And you're going to feel like you're a little kid back in PE again. Let's get some big arm circles going forward.
up or down.
Oh, it doesn't matter either way. Whatever feels good. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Good. Keep on going through that. And this is also a really good diagnostic opportunity to notice if anything feels tight. And noticing too that one of the places that you put your hand where you were feeling overwhelmed is getting addressed here, right? We know that trauma can store itself in the body, and you're now literally doing something in the space where you're holding the trauma and we're bringing movement to it.
I switched to
Sure.
okay, that I switched to direction. Where should I wait?
Yeah, you can switch directions. There you go. Perfect. Really good.
This also reminds
X.
Kundalini breath work where it's bringing in the open heart, opening the heart energy.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So go ahead and rest your arms. And do you notice anything different coming up for you now?
Okay. All right. Notice this neutral. You
Mhm.
can tell I'm a mover. The word that comes up is playful.
Playful. I love that.
Playful
Awesome.
energy coming. I also
Good.
don't relax with you and how you do this work. There's something to be said for the energy that guiding is bringing to the process.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. You want to do one more? Maybe one more? All right. Go ahead and give me your best 10 body weight squats. Your best 10 body weight squats. Let's imagine that.
What's a body weight squat for anyone who?
Yeah. So imagine that there's a chair behind you. Beautiful. You're demonstrating it perfectly for all those watching. She's a pro. Yeah. Go ahead and do a few more and I'll verbally explain it. So imagine that there's a chair behind you and it's a little bit too far away. There we go. Yep. So you're bending your knees, you're pushing your hips back behind you. It's almost like you're going to stamp the wall behind you with your butt. There we go. Perfect. Yep. And that chair is a little bit lower than you want it to be. Perfect. There we go. Beautiful squats. Yep. And you're driving your knees out away from each other as you come up. Sometimes the knees have a tendency to want to cave in as we're developing that quad strength. Beautiful. Good. A few more here. I'm not counting. We're going by feel here. Beautiful. Yep. And it's about 10. And so what we're doing now is we're getting the heart rate up a smidge and then noticing what that's doing for you and getting into the body that way. Also, another great diagnostic opportunity to say, oh, I have something going on in my left hip or my right knee is feeling a little bit funky today. So then we know to be a little cautious in those spaces and throughout the workout and talk about what it's like for you to start to get your heart rate up a little bit. Because sometimes what I find is people in recovery, especially early recovery from drug addiction with trauma, experience a lot of thought flooding during times where their heart rate's getting up and they can actually get really emotional. And so I like to get the heart rate up in a warm up before we get into the actual workout for more diagnostic opportunity, not just physically, but also emotionally of, hey, where's your headspace at? If I start to get your heart rate up and things start to get uncomfortable, what's going to be revealed here? So even just by doing something as simple as a bunch of body weight squats, where the client is trusting me to do that, right? So there's so much trust in this space too, because exercise often does bring up so much emotion for people. If it's, you're doing a movement that you've never done before, you might feel silly doing it. Or if something feels really heavy and hard, there's maybe that voice that says, this is way too hard. I just want to quit. And then perhaps there's also a voice that I get to encourage and make even louder that says, no, you keep going because you can do hard things. And that mentality that we're developing is the one that says you can have trauma and you can be empowered and do wonderful things and live a wonderful, empowered life, even with trauma.
Yeah. Would you say when somebody does reach that emotional place because the heart rate goes up and it might even for some feel like a panic attack or it's scary to feel the body so much?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
pause in that moment and attend to that, give space to that? So that, like you're saying, like that's the opportunity. If someone's exposed, making it safe for that exposure.
Yep.
Know that when I'm exposed here, it's safe because maybe in the past, when I've been exposed, it's just been re-traumatizing.
Exactly. Yeah. And going back to this concept of corrective relationships, oftentimes I work with people who weren't allowed to cry as children, right? Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And so coming into a personal training session where, as the trainer, if somebody starts to cry, I'm stoked. I'm like, yes, yes. And I'm going to champion the heck out of that person's inner child. And my hope is that they feel so uplifted and loved and safe so they know, okay, I can come here and I can get fit and I can find healing and I can cry. There are people where I have a plan in my mind. I write people exercise programs. I spend so much time on them and I'm like, oh, this is going to be the perfect program. We're going to follow it to a T when we're not training together. They're going to follow it to a T and it's all perfect and it's written very scientifically to create hypertrophy, right? For this person to reach their fitness goals. And often somebody comes to me, we're doing the session, something happens emotionally, and I'm like, you're the plan. You're the most important plan. So
Yeah.
I'm just tending to this human being and being like, okay, the weights are there and we'll get there. But if we need to spend time talking, if I need to spend time telling you how wonderful you are and how you can do this, then I will. Yeah. You want to do a third? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do a third. So for our third experiential, this is actually a Bikram yoga posture that I'll have you do. And I love, love, love interweaving some of the traditional Bikram postures into warm-ups and cool downs with my clients because I really believe in the postures. So this one has a funny name. It's called wind removing. And so what I'll have you do is go ahead and lay down flat on your back with your legs outstretched in front of you. Just totally relax here. Yeah, palms facing up towards the ceiling. Go ahead and take a deep inhale through your nose. Inhale, belly rise. Exhale through the nose, belly falls. And perhaps as you're laying here, imagine that you just finished a really hard 1 hour workout. Imagine that. Even through all the overwhelm that you've been carrying, you showed up, you just finished this really hard workout. Go ahead and take another deep inhale through your nose. Exhale through your nose. So transitioning out of Savasana into our wind removing pose, go ahead and bend your right knee. Good. And go ahead and bring that knee towards your right shoulder. Interlace your fingers over the knee and gently pull down the right knee. You have great mobility. You're a star. I'm always excited when I see people with good mobility. I'm like, yes, awesome. Good. Maybe with every inhale, you just take a moment to notice how you're feeling. Perhaps your mood has changed since we first started. With every inhale, take a deep breath and exhale. See if you can bring that knee closer down into that shoulder and noticing the way that when you hold this posture longer, things maybe start to open up for you. And perhaps emotions start to reveal themselves to you too. Good. And to get into that left hip flexor a little bit more, to access it more, go ahead and bring your attention to your left toes and flex your toes towards your face. Toes towards your face. Beautiful. And notice what that does for your hip flexor. Isn't that cool? Changes things, right? Yeah, go ahead and take one more deep breath here. Good. Exhale and relax that leg down. Deep breaths. Inhale here. And as you inhale, bring the left leg towards your left shoulder. Interlace the fingers. Gently pulling that knee down towards your chest. Noticing if one side feels different than the other. That's okay. Perfect. Really good. And I like this too because it really gives people permission here just to acknowledge all of their hard work. Oftentimes, I would have a conversation with a person in this position. What do you feel like you went really well today? What are you proud of today? What do you feel like you could have improved on today? What is an exercise that you loved or what's an exercise that you hated? And I love to have those conversations and give people permission to say, oh man, this workout today sucked, or I hate this exercise. Can we never do it again? To give that permission. Good. One more deep breath here. Exhale and go ahead and bring that leg down. Good. Go ahead and totally relax those legs. And now you're going to bring both legs up at the same time and give yourself a bear hug here. Yes. Awesome. I can tell you were a Bikram yogi because you are grasping your elbows perfectly. I didn't even have to say it. Good. And noticing here maybe what you feel like as you embrace yourself in this way. What does it feel like to give yourself a total body hug? Perfect. Another deep inhale here. Exhale, and both legs totally relax. Nice.
Good enough. Good enough.
Beautiful.
I really enjoyed it. The most recent thing that stood out to me is when I was in the prone pose and holding my legs in the wind remote moving pose, which is a funny name. And we can all guess why it's called. I was in it and you were saying you were coaching clients, and I'm receiving that right now of in reflecting on what worked, what felt good, what can you acknowledge yourself for. That that struck me because often, even as therapists, we're giving. And so it's nice to receive the same guidance and feeling that guidance of reflecting on what was good and what went right is so nourishing. Also because we're even the brain is conditioned to look for what's wrong,
Yes.
and then we have this collective conditioning of looking for what's wrong when marketing, and then trauma tells us scan for danger, being invited to in this connected way to retrain our brain to reflect on what's right and then get to feel that and embody that. That felt good too.
Right on. I'm so happy you enjoyed it.
So I feel like it was a rich conversation. How can people find you? How can they Lord Fox recovery method?
So, as far as contacting me, the best way to reach me for personal training is just to email me at foxrecoverymethod@gmail.com.
It's honestly a sincere pleasure talking to you. I'm excited to get the word out about this process, this approach, the spirit of what you're offering. So thank you
Thank
for taking
you.
time today. And of course, I'll put your information in the description of the video so anybody
Awesome.
talk to you can reach you. And yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
been
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. If there's any way that I can be helpful in the future, don't hesitate to email me, okay?
okay. Sounds good. And to all of who's watching this video, know that Robin and I are sending you our love from our hearts. And we wish you nothing but the best. Feel free to reach out to us if there's anything we can do to support you, and have a beautiful, blessed day.